These are some of the publications that I own from the publisher Buske, Helmut Buske Verlag, the major German publisher of high-quality academic language reference materials and learning manuals. As you can see from the title of what I think is this, it's called a Swahili intensive course. It's really a short intermediate reader that has the glossary in English and in German. And from this Icelandic reference book of verbal conjugations that has a short introduction in English and French, as well as the glossary, but is mainly just reference tables of Icelandic verbs. A small percentage of the publications of this firm are in English or French or accessible in other languages, but in the main this is a German publishing house, and you need to know German in order to access their Lehrbücher, their textbooks of various languages, and they have them in upwards of 60 languages. And the existence of this firm alone is a good reason for justifying one of the major tenets that I often talk about in my writings and that I've enunciated recently in this format, that you really ought to learn French and German first if you are going to be serious about wanting to go learn other languages, because some of the materials that you would want to find and use for learning them are going to be available in these languages, and if you can't access them, you're really missing out on a great deal. Apart from the fact that they are all published by the same house, though, I would not. This video is a little bit different. I don't think that I can call Buske a series. There's no real unity among these books here or the other books that I'm showing you. They just happen to be all very high quality books in which the dumbing down process that's so characteristic of our times is really just not to be felt. It's not present here. You're going to find very serious, objective, high-quality books if you see this little logo down here, Buske. For this Icelandic textbook, which I would recommend very highly, they follow a format of giving you a reference grammar first and foremost, just going through it, and then a set of readings to which they refer you back to specific points in the reference section, and then have the vocabulary that you need for the specific reading, and then some translations from German into Icelandic, and then they go into just a reader section that is with a glossary at the end only. That's the format for Icelandic, which is obviously relatively easy for Germanic speakers, and it's the same format basically for this Yiddish textbook. And all of these books also do come with recordings. However high quality the texts are and objective they are, there's nothing wrong with the recordings that come from this publishing house, but in general, there's nothing terribly right about them either. They tend to be they record the dialogues only. They don't record any of the examples or the exercises, and they do it almost sort of as out of obligation. They're just not dynamic. They tend to have just one speaker read at a sort of relatively low-keyed monotone, but you do get a tone, a good taste of what you're working with. My favorite book from all of these here, and this is something that I would very highly recommend to anybody who's moderately interested in taking a serious stab at the Korean language. I truly consider this to be the most wonderful book that I have worked through systematically and seriously. You can perhaps see it showing up how much work I did with this book. This is how I learned Korean. This wonderful book, Wilfried Hermann, Lehrbuch der modernen koreanischen Sprache. And this is the only textbook that I know that presents the Korean language in any kind of logical and systematic format. There's just nothing else out there like that for this book. I wrote a Korean textbook myself, in which I tried to do something similar, but I only did an initial volume of planned several series, whereas this really does give you a full overview of the whole language. It works like a lot of other books here. They give you a couple of reading texts. Unfortunately, there's no particular vocabulary to them. You just have to keep flipping back and forth to the glossary, but they give you a reading text, then lots of systematic, logical, clear explanation of the grammar with lots of good examples, and then lots of intelligent exercises to do it. 800 pages, that's what you need to have a good go at Korean. Another special thing about this book here is it teaches as a basis the standard. This was written in the last days of East Germany, and I guess he had been able to go to North Korea, and this is the only textbook out there that I know available in the Western world that teaches North Korean as a basis, but it gives you a point-by-point comparison for South Korean, when and however they're different. The Japanese book is, well, they had a 3-volume intensive series here, similar in detail. And what else can I show you as there are other kinds of books? As I said, there's no particular unity to their presentation. There's no particular format such as the Assimil or the Linguaphone or the other courses that I have shown you. Again, they generally proceed with giving you a reading text and then the grammar, and then exercises with an answer key at the end. There's not much to say beyond that. Is that, again, they're not watered down. Most of the publications I have here are from the early 1990s, and they just have not been diluted or watered down in any way, shape, or form. This one for Armenian. And again, this is, I think, this publication house in itself, which has upwards of 60 different languages, is a good reason for, if you're involved in any kind of humanistic endeavor, particularly in polyglottery, that you might want to consider learning German so that you could have access to studying a lot of languages here. You see that there are not things that are available for lots of there are a lot of rare languages here, and Helmut Buske Verlag is by no means the only major German publisher that has these things. If you're interested particularly in German, in African languages, there's the Verlag von Dietrich Reimer, and they have the whole Marburger Studien zu Afrika und Asienkunde. And here's their whole series A of African studies, and you can see they have maybe a third of their works available in English, a third in French, and a third in German. And so you're just not going to be able to access all the reference materials and the best learning materials that you're going to need if you're cut off from using these two other languages, German and French, and restrict yourself only to English learning materials. Here's a Rüdiger Köper Verlag, Köln, that also has the Afrika-wissenschaftliche Lehrbücher for lots of African languages like Bambara, Kanuri, Swahili, Shona, Oromo, and the like. So these are, I think, once again, the point comes up, often should we be restricted only to English language learning materials? You're going to be cut off from a lot of materials for languages. Perhaps there's nothing available in English for learning them, and perhaps the best things, as in the case again of this wonderful Korean book, are going to be available in other languages. So this is just a small taste of the 60 odd languages that are available from Helmut Buske Verlag, Hamburg.